Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Fulton Overcoming. So my guest today is someone that came out of Restoration City, and he was there in the early 2000s, went through the rehab part, and saw quite a few things. Some very weird things started happening. He was in the process of getting engaged to a woman there, and soon after started noticing a lot of red flags coming up. So he is here to tell some of that story and some of the things he encountered. So I'm gonna go ahead and welcome Manuel. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Real good.
That's great. I'm so glad you are doing this. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and everything. We'll just get started. Like I said, you were there in the early 2000s, and I believe a little bit, you even came a little bit before that, but I'll let you tell some of that story. How and why did you come in?
I was part of a small church in Groves, Texas, and my sister was having some problems. And by recommendation of the pastor, he recommended this place out in Hungerford. So her and my brother-in-law came out there, and we're out there for quite a while, doing really good, at least a couple of years. And I saw the transformation. At the same time, I was going through a divorce, had my own business, and everything was falling apart. And the pastor recommended maybe I should take a ride out there and see what's going on. So I did, and fell in love with the place, and saw what was going on. And being that I was in pain, I saw some place where maybe I could get some healing. And I was convinced that that's where I needed to be at. So I shut my business down and moved out to the center. And I became part of the worship team. One of the drummers, his father was a drummer, and him and I would rotate. And I lived in an apartment above the chapel and would just donate time when I wasn't working in Houston. So that went on for a while. And things got to get better with healing from the divorce. I never went into the program. I might have attended some classes, but everything was good. And till I started getting interested in one of the young ladies that was there, I felt that I was ready for a new relationship. It'd probably been a little over a year. And the pastor's daughter was getting married. And so this woman was living with the pastor's daughter, and she had her own trailer there. So they were living together. The pastor's daughter's getting married. She's moving out. And so there's this woman there. And it's about the same time that we started seeing each other. And it was approved by the leadership. Nobody was saying anything about it, but things started moving really fast. And this is the same woman that somebody on one of your podcasts was talking about that had cancer, or not really sure whether she did or not. But I will say this, being there in that, I guess you'd call it the inner circle, I come to realize that what she was doing.
Sorry, were you in the inner circle?
By way of my brother-in-law and sister. My brother-in-law was the men's supervisor, and then being there, when I say inner circle, hearing a lot of the stuff that nobody else would hear. Mm-hmm. And just the hush hush stuff, Mm-hmm. But I didn't notice it first, but as time progressed, I began to realize that she suffers from what's called Munchausen's. Most women have it. It's Munchausen's by proxy, which means that they will literally cause and inflict harm or something on a child and take it to the emergency room so they can get attention. Being that she was born with a, I don't even know how to say it, but there was something wrong with her when she was born. There was a lot of attention that she spent a lot of time in the hospital when she was an infant, and she got used to that. And so that, I think, is what precipitated her having Munchausen's. She literally would cause harm to herself to bring attention to herself. And that's where the cancer comes in. Like someone said, I believe she was sick, that she had something, because you just can't really cause jaundice. She would be yellow one day, and not the next, but this bit about her hair falling out and being blind and all this, it was just part of the Munchausen's. You know, it was brought up that, you know, found out she was going to movies. And I was the one that found the movie tickets in her pockets.
Wow.
And
Wow.
got too close too soon, and we ended up she ended up becoming pregnant, and this all played into her being sick. She carried the baby for a while, almost 2 or 3 months, and she began to show. Well, she played it off as her stomach was distended, and it looked like a basketball. And this was about the time that everyone was carrying her on a chair in the chapel. I remember that because I listened to the video yesterday.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So she's playing this off, and I'm inadvertently feeding into this whole deal. I'm looking at getting married because now we have a child on the way, and she's playing it off as something completely different. And I eventually, once I moved her trailer, I was the one who moved her trailer, and that was an ordeal. Coming to get the trailer, and the pastor had one of the elders come with his tractor and hook up to the trailer to keep us from moving it. Meanwhile, I had a company there moving it, ready to take it. And we did end up taking it. I think I had to pay some money to get it moved, but I moved it to another city. And when I did, that's whenever I started going through some of the stuff that sent up red flags for me. And that's when I found a Planned Parenthood appointment that she had went to. She told me she lost the baby, and that's not what happened. You know, I mean, it was tearing at my heartstrings, telling me that, you know, we have a choice. I can do the chemo and we lose the baby, or I cannot do the chemo and have the baby. So she made the decision without me by terminating the pregnancy and telling me that she lost it. And then that's when the trip to Italy came in. Everybody was raising money for her to go to Italy. And I knew at that point, this is really not good, because I was getting letters, I was communicating with her when she was in Italy, and it was a vacation more than anything, just like they would do once a year on this 10-city tour of Europe that I almost went on, and I'm glad I didn't, because whenever they came back, I heard all kinds of, you've been before, and I heard all kinds of stories about drunkenness and this and that. But to back up, after all this happened, I was asked to leave, so I did. And years later, after falling back into another addiction, I came back and humbled myself, and they literally read me the riot act. I went there to get help. I had a sponsor because it was like $500 a month. I went into the program, which was 18 months. I didn't graduate because that's when I started seeing red flags, and people started leaving, and they were told, do not communicate with these people who are leaving. They are leaving, they have broken covenant. And that was this big thing. You know, I joined the church, you know, when I was first there. And if you're there and you join the church, you literally have made covenant with the pastor and that expression of the body of Christ. And at that time, I thought, this is not right. This is not, because the church is bigger than a mortar and brick building. And it's bigger than this one expression of the body of Christ. So I couldn't understand, if you want to leave, why can't you just leave? But you would leave, and the pastor would literally tell people, don't talk to them. You know, I handed them over to the devil. You know, we cast them out from here. They're no longer part of this body, or even in covenant with God. So if you broke covenant with them, you broke covenant with God, and that's where I separated us. This is not correct. And the reason why I left was because one of the elders had laid hands on one of the students, and I said, this is enough. You know, after seeing these families leave, and leaving in the best way that they could, and then the way the reaction was, don't talk to them, don't look at them, don't have nothing to do with them. And I thought, something's not right here. And then my brother-in-law, my sister left, and they were telling me some of the stuff that was going on behind closed doors. I think one of the very first red flags was when I was in the program was there was a man that was about 50 years old who was an alcoholic. And one of the things that we did half the day was work detail, and we were cleaning vehicles. I was in a mechanic shop, and we were cleaning vehicles, and he was cleaning the pastor's Suburban, and he found an empty bottle of vodka. He goes, what's this? And my brother-in-law covered. He said, you don't know whose it is. You don't know if he drank it. You don't know anything, because they would twist scripture and use stuff like, well, love covers a multitude of sins. You need to just believe the best because love believes the best. It was just all about twisting scripture, and it's still being done today. I mean, I click in once in a while and look at the morning services, and what was going on 25 years ago is still going on today. So that poor guy saw what was going on and just packed his bags and left. And I felt bad for him. And I felt bad that I knew my brother-in-law was basically lying to all of us, including me. But he was like rocking a hard place. What do I do? You know, and at some point he just had enough. And him and my sister left and moved to Wharton for a while. The sad thing is that everybody who left, I think, really struggled right afterwards. And I think that's what's important about what you're doing, is because it's therapeutic, it's healing to talk about this stuff and get it out. I mean, I've had to go to therapists and psychiatrists and get some healing, not in addition to the Lord, just healing my heart and my mind, because it's really detrimental. I mean, you can really cause someone to spiral into, you know, the abyss. And I prayed for the pastor, because I mean, the word says it's better that you be at the bottom of the sea with a millstone than you cause one of these little ones to stumble. And that's exactly what happened. Oh, I remember when the pastor's son was born, and he was very sick, and we had prayer chains, and everyone was, you know, really scared about what was going to happen. I really believed he received a miracle from the Lord. But the funny thing was, I'll never forget it. My memory is pretty good. I remember the pastor coming in one morning and said that he was in the shower, and that the Lord spoke to him that what he needed to do for his son to be healed was he needed to repent of everything that he had done to the people that he had casted over to the enemy, and reach out to each and every one of them and make things right. And it was after that healed.
I remember that. Yeah. Let's just real quick. There was a lot of info in there. Let's go back to the first time you were there. And it is really crazy to me that I have a feeling a lot of people are not going to know about the pregnancy. When she, that time, was she, that everything else was going on within the church, you when we're like praying for her, fasting for her, everybody, people in the church are going to her house and serving her, like, you know, 24/7. People are over there. Is that all going on during this time?
Yeah. It's surreal to even think about that any of that happened. But yeah, there was one lady that was always there. She's still a very good friend of mine today. But I think she was one of the women's supervisor, and she was always there with her. She kind of took the place of the pastor's daughter when the pastor's daughter left, but she would come by early in the morning and make sure that this woman's son was getting ready for school, because she needed help for everything, you know. But
did you suspect that it was fake during this time?
Not at the beginning. At the beginning, you know, love is blind. And so I'm listening to all these things that they're telling me. Love hopes the best, love believes the best, love covers a multitude of sins. So I'm thinking and doing the same thing that they're doing. But deep in my heart and in my mind, I'm thinking, how can you lose your hair but still have your eyebrows and other hair on your arms and your body and stuff? You know, and it's just everything. When you see that there's clumps of hair missing, and then it's almost hard to make yourself believe or ask yourself the question, is she really ripping her hair out? Because it wasn't shaved until she shaved the whole thing. But then it would immediately grow back out.
Holy crap. So she was pulling it out, maybe?
Yeah.
Wow. Holy goodness.
And I want to say something about, I don't remember because I probably wasn't there. This is when things really went full tilt, and she started, the woman that yesterday that I was watching was talking about people would go to her house, or even you were talking about she became very spiritual, and I couldn't help but laugh when I'm watching the video, because I was like, okay. One of the things the elders told me whenever they told me that I had to separate from her, and then I eventually was asked to leave the center, was that, to make her look bad. You realize that she used to be in witchcraft. They're telling me this, that she used to be into witchcraft, and that her parents were into witchcraft, and they were into some really sordid things, and they used to use the girls, her and her sisters, for this kind of stuff. Well, if you're Hispanic, then you know what a curandera or curandero is, and santeria, and that's exactly what was going on. And being that they're all really close from the border, there's a lot of demonic stuff and principalities going on down there. So they knew about that, but they didn't tell anybody. So this is exactly how she was able to prophesy or give you a word of knowledge, because you can do that. That's what these tarot card readers and palm readers do, is they'll give you a little bit, because they're listening to familiar spirits, which are demonic spirits, and they're listening, and they're able to see what's going on in your life, and they'll go further and say, but I can take care of it for you for a fee. So what she was doing was she was connecting with some evil spirits and was able to tell you a little bit about yourself.
Do you really believe that? Or do you think, I think because what?
I know for a fact that's what she was doing. She always had this smile on her face.
Because she also lived with the pastor's oldest daughter, and I'm pretty sure if they thought she was deaf, they probably talked around her a lot about a lot of stuff. She probably overheard stuff is where I'm getting at. It may not have been all like in the spiritual realm or whatever.
I didn't know that she was supposed to be deaf. I remember her being blind or something for a short time.
It was like blind, deaf, like all this stuff. And then just happened to know. I mean, look, when you're dealing with people and you you can feed off their weakness or their tendencies, and just even knowing very little about them, I kind of have a feeling she probably overheard a lot of stuff.
That had to be after I left, because there was that window when I left. Right when I left, she was leaving to go to Italy. Of all places.
That had happened. Yeah, she. They told us there was like this trial run in Europe. That was this new thing that they were going to try. And I feel like she was there. Wasn't she there for like 4 to 6 months or something? It was like a few months. And everybody in the church gave funds for this, gave money for her to go. And there was another woman in the church that went with her as well. And I am like, how did she get away with all this for that long? And you were not found out. I'm like, well, what? I don't know. What the heck? But yeah, I mean, just nuts.
The injections was called, and I meant to do some research on it yesterday to see if it was legit, but the story was it was B17, which comes from the seed of a nectarine or an almond. Looks just like an almond, and the only places you could get the injection was in Italy, of all places, because she claimed to be part Italian. And it was by injection, and it was $1,500 an injection. So question is, did she get healed when she came back, or was she still in that mode, of being quote sick?
For sure. Man, yeah, just that. So what was the reason that they made you leave that first time?
We were getting, the first time I was there is because they didn't approve of us getting as close as we were getting, and that she was sick and she was fixing to go overseas and yada, yada, yada. And, at the same time that I wasn't doing anything any different than what the pastor was doing with one of his aides that would come and clean and take care of the children, and they would go out and they were doing it, at the same time that I was doing what I was doing, he was doing with this young lady that is now his wife. And I remember that because this woman that I was with, we would watch their youngest son while they would go to Sugarland and go to the famous Papacitas outing.
Famous Papacitas. So by the way, FYI, Papacitas is a really good restaurant.
Oh, yes, it is. So that was a whole nother deal. That it was another red flag. I'd be with this woman, and we'd be taking care of the son who was we were still having to feed him through a tube. And so they would come late at night, and I would notice something's not right. They're really, really happy, and they smell a little different.
It
And
smells.
you could smell the alcohol. The wine was the big thing. It used to be espresso and cappuccino. Everyone had one in their house. And they went from that to the favorite drink on campus was wine. I'll never forget this. We were in the back room, but whenever they first started getting found out about what was going on, we was in the back room praying, as the worship team does. And I saw the communion sitting on the table, and there was actual wine with grape juice. And I thought, what's going on here? You know, things were starting to get.
Was that
This-
in the actual church, or was that just in the back
the
room
church.
where you guys were?
In the back room where we were, that's where we were preparing the communion and
Yeah.
Praying over it. But they had like an option, which some churches do today.
This is on a grounds of a rehab facility where most of the people that are within the church are getting out of coming off of alcohol or drugs or whatever. And I mean, we first started drinking wine whenever we went to Europe, and they would have over there, it's a little more common. You would have real wine during a Sunday service. Everybody would partake of it. But over there, it wasn't like you were on the grounds of a rehab facility. It was a church. It was just, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to harp on that. I was just kind of trying to get what you were saying. So,
now that you bring that up, it very well could be where it all began, because I don't know when the mission trips to Europe started, but I do know that if you're in Europe, that if you get drunk at the table while we're eating dinner, that's an insult, because that's part of their culture. They drink wine like water, and they think it's insulting for Americans to come over there and get drunk.
Yep.
And so maybe they thought, well, if we're doing it over there, we can bring it back over here and implement it into the church. But you're at a Christian rehab, like you just said. So this is something that needs to be thought about before they do it. So long story short, things started getting out. Clients or students are starting to talk about things that are going on behind closed doors. I remember one night we were babysitting, and all the elders hopped into Suburbans and took off. I was asked, where are they going? They're going out to Sugarland, to go have dinner and be gone for hours and come back, and everybody would be ripped. And I thought, something's not up. And then so they got to where it became really blatant. And in order to cover the mess, they started bringing in other pastors from other churches from the Valley and in Houston to condone. And then we started hearing the scriptures. What was Jesus's first miracle? Well, he turned water into wine. The Bible doesn't say not to drink. It says do not be drunk. But they stop there. They don't go any further, that you're supposed to be filled with the Spirit instead of just being drunk. So that was their MO. And they did that for a while. Pretty soon it just became to the point where it wasn't nothing to go to someone's house and there'd be a bottle of wine, and everything went downhill from there. I mean, I was told it was nothing for the elders and the pastor to go into town and go to Papazitos and sit down, and for the pastor to order 2 Long Island teas. So it went from wine to hard liquor.
Yeah.
And
so I thought, because we knew they finally told us about the wine, right? We're allowed to drink wine. So in my head, I mean, my dad was sober for a long time until this freedom of the spirit started going on. And in my head, I was like, okay, well, wine's okay, whatever. And then I heard somebody was drinking beer or vodka or something. I was like, oh no, wait, what? To me, at that age, I thought it was bad or something. I didn't know. Like, I just, and so it's just funny how to me, it's all alcohol. It's all the same.
Yeah.
But
it all comes down to self-control and temperance. I mean, you have to
having
moderation.
For sure. So let's get back. Okay, so all that's going on. So let's get back to real quick that whenever they make you leave, you're getting too close to the person you were dating at that time. And let me just say, they were in very much control of anyone dating. I've talked about this before that my age group was a lot younger. We just were not allowed to date whatsoever. That was like uncalled for. But even older people like yourself and like even if you did start to date a little bit, it was very underneath their control. And
Yes.
you had to be very open and honest about what you were doing. And if you were getting too intimate and just like they were very into what anyone that was dating there. And so I guess you guys were getting a little too close.
Yeah, they didn't know how close. They just saw that I was spending a lot of time over there. And I think a couple of people saw red flags, rightly so, and so they mentioned it to the leadership and asked me to back up a little bit. And I didn't, because I knew at the time there was a child in the womb and I was trying to figure out what was going on. That's whenever she put her arm out and her hand up and said, hang on, I'm going back underneath the covering of the censor and the leadership, stating that, I got to do what they tell me to do. And this was our first and only argument. When I explained to her, I said, this has nothing to do with them. This is about us. And she said, I have to be obedient. That was the big word, obedient. I had to be obedient to what the eldership was telling me. You couldn't make any decisions for yourself there. It had to be, you had to be obedient. And that was the big word, it's like be obedient, and then they would twist scripture.
Yeah. Did they know she was pregnant?
No, they did not know until I came back and went through the program and told them all about it.
So she hid it from everyone? You were the only one that knew?
That's it.
Holy crap.
And I didn't know that the baby was aborted until later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy goodness. Wow.
But it all started to come out once I moved her trailer away from the center, and then she came back from Italy, and I tried to get back with her, in touch with her, and her father did the same thing that the center was doing. He was protecting her, so to speak. And she did the same thing she did with me at the center. She said, I have to be obedient to what my father says. I'm thinking, man, do you have a will at all? Or a choice in anything, So that was the last that I heard from her. I mean, I wish her well, but that chapter of my life has been long over. I do want to touch base on something that I did. I went to the Valley to do a job for somebody that was a contributor to the center, with one of the elders and the women's supervisor. I spoke to you about this before. I thought it was really strange that when you come into the program that you had to go cold turkey on everything. I saw people having, what they claimed you didn't. I saw people having withdrawals from heroin and stuff. If you were on psych meds, all the medicines that you came in went into a certain medical locker that was locked up. And being on psych meds and having been on psych meds, you don't just stop that, because you can go into all kind of problems, So I thought that was really weird that, somebody would come in with 13 psych meds and just be stripped from it and tell you, God will heal you. And they've just suffered. There was nothing other than the spiritual side of the program, whereas the one that I just graduated from has the clinical side and the spiritual. So we went down south and did a job for this man who contributes to the center, and we made a trip over the border, one of the elders and the women's supervisor, and we went into a pharmacy, and I said, what are we doing here? I said, well, we're going to get some stuff for the center. And I said, okay. I figured it would be something else. And the deacon of the elders says, that's where they keep the good stuff. And it was a safe that was sitting up right to where you could see it. This is Mexico, mind. So he opens the safe and puts a bunch of opiates in a bag, along with a bunch of other stuff. So I'm thinking, okay. And so we come back and we do the job. We're crossing the border. He said, here, this is your bag, and this is her bag, and this is my bag. This was 22 years ago. Nobody thought anything of it. We came back over the border with opiates. And I said, what are these for? And he jokingly said, you don't know your pastor likes to do this? And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, I mean, we got that medicine cabinet back over there that's full of the stuff that the clients come in with. And, I forget what his phrase was, but basically he likes to get high once in a while. It's nothing to take a couple of pills and to drink something.
Oh my God.
So
Wow.
I thought, well, that was really strange. I just risked my freedom unknowingly. I could have very well gotten caught and went to federal prison in Mexico or the United States. So that was the last time I went on something like that, because I thought that was really strange. But
so strange. Wow. God, that's just so crazy. They did things like that. We were when we would travel on Straightway and stuff, because we went down to the valley and did a lot of schools down there, and we would go over the border and stuff. And I believe they were doing some of that. I mean, I was very naive at the time, so I didn't really realize what was going on, which I'm sure the rest of us were as well. But that kind of stuff, I believe a couple times happened. Just crazy. Just real quick, did you ever see, did you yourself go through with any withdrawals?
No. Anytime I've ever quit, and I have several different times, quit a drug, it was supernatural healing. I never had any problems. Where I just graduated from. Here's the testimony. I was drinking a fifth of whiskey a day on psych meds, trying to commit suicide, and I literally would have withdrawals. I would wake up in the morning and shake until I could get a drink. Upon coming into the mission where I'm at now, all the way up to that date, I would always have withdrawals. I came into the mission, and that day when I walked through the gates, I never had withdrawals whatsoever.
Wow.
I didn't have, but I never had withdrawals there at the center. I did see other people go through it, and it's just some of them couldn't last 2 or 3 days. They would end up in a hospital.
That was my next question. If you had seen anyone else go through withdrawals there.
Yeah, I saw one guy that was
crazy. We've talked about this very, very little so far, but their big thing was like, in 30 years, not one person has gone through withdrawals. The Lord Jesus just heals them. And it's like, well, come to find out, I think they would just probably hide the people that were actually going through withdrawals or something.
Yeah. I think that one guy that I saw go through 3 days of withdrawal finally ended up having to go to the hospital.
Wow. I mean, don't you, this is what I have heard, speaking to other people that have been through other rehabs and stuff. Aren't you on like some kind of medications for a little bit, like coming out?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
so you gotta be,
every time. Go ahead.
In this type of rehab, they were just completely just trying to use Jesus and the teachings of Jesus and all this stuff, and the spiritualness of like what you said, and not having like a therapist on site or doctors or nurses on site, to where actually like there's people actually on site that can actually help with really what's going on. And, like you said, people going through withdrawals and stuff. I mean, maybe you don't go through withdrawals, and that's awesome, but other people might. And, your head is also going through a ton of stuff, coming off of all of this, but just.
Well, like we talked about a while ago, there has to be a balance. If there's not a balance, then it's all one-sided. And so to mention again where I'm at, there is half spiritual and half clinical. The clinical is psychiatric and therapist, and we also have Harris Health nurse practitioner on site. So we address all of that in addition to the spiritual side. So both sides are covered. Whereas at the center, you come in, you go cold turkey, all your medicines are stripped from you, and it's nothing but the word of God. But the problem with that is they twist the scriptures. And I read a book after I left called Twisted Scriptures, and it made a lot of sense. I even went back to my home pastor and said to him what was going on. And he shook his head and he said, no, he said, it's gotten out of hand. I said, what do you mean? He said, anytime one man has that much power over that many people, he said, you have a cult.
Yep.
And I said, whoa, I'm glad I got out.
Yeah.
But the worst part, I think, about the whole thing was what he would do. And I guess I could say this. I think God punished him for what he was doing. I mean, he was doing God's work in the beginning, and I think he had a lot of success. And then it just started to go downhill little by little. He started letting in the enemy. And so handing people over to Satan is what he would say. I hand you over to Satan and kick you out. You know, that's not love. You know, there's no reason for any of that. I think he was, you know, at least for at the very least, he was chastised about what he was doing. That's why he came to us and told us all. You remember we said it, that he believed that he needed to go on, and that's whenever the son was healed.
Wow.
Right after that.
Yeah. So you end up leaving when they make you leave that first time, and then you come back and go through the rehab part in the early 2000s. And then you said you were there for like a couple of years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I left because one of the elders put hands on one of the clients, one of the students, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it, but I knew the kid. He was very young, and he was so upset that I knew he wasn't lying. And I thought, man, if they've gotten to the point where now they're physically manhandling people, this is ridiculous. Because the subject of 115 came up yesterday, watching that video, and I just had to laugh. Session. I remember them pulling me into the counseling session to be actually one of the counselors, and have someone on the hot seat, and just basically trying to get whoever was there conformed and disciplined to what needed to be going on. And if you weren't in 100% as to what they were telling this person, they would send that person out and then put you on the hot seat and ask you, what is your problem? That was their favorite. What's your problem? What's your problem? I mean, I remember the pastor's son, whenever he could first start talking, that was some of his first words was, what's your problem? He would go around and ask, what's your problem? Because everybody had a problem.
Yeah, my goodness. Well, I guess there's, quite a few red flags that are going on. Were you, how long did it take before you finally were like, I've got to get out of here?
Well, one of my DOCs, the drug of choice, has always been opiates. Never did heroin. So I was at this woman's house, and I hurt my back at work, and I ended up losing that job or quitting that job there in Katy. And I had hurt my back pretty bad. And so the woman I was with, the one who had cancer, she had everything that you could imagine. So like I said before, I believe she had some kind of a sickness. It might have been self-inflicted, once again, the Munchausen's, not by proxy, but Munchausen's, because she actually had a disc right here where instead of injecting morphine, she could just take and put the needle here and it would go into it, you know, similar to a pump. So she had all kind of stuff. She had synthetic morphine, and she would give me some because I was literally in pain. I'd hurt myself, and still suffer from that today. But she had morphine in vial form, in the liquid form. And when she confessed to me that she was giving injections to, let's see if I can say this right, one of the elders, he was made an elder because he was fixing to marry the pastor's daughter.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his problem was, why he was there, but he evidently apparently liked opiates also, and was always complaining about his back. They got married and went to Mexico, and something happened. We got word back that he was having problems down there, you know, and things weren't going well on the honeymoon. But she told me, she confessed to me that don't say anything to anybody, but I give these injections to the elder, to that man. I'm like, what? And he was getting injections from her for his back problems. So
remember him. That's crazy. I always remember him having back problems.
I remember being in service one afternoon or evening, and that particular elder coming in that was getting the injections for his back and pills noticing that his voice was very deep, and that's one of the telltale signs of opiates. He was very, very happy, and a big smile, and he was engaging to the pastor's teaching by being very, very vocal, almost obnoxious, like as if someone was drunk. And I could tell what was going on. So this guy's high, you know, and it clicked along with what she was telling me about. I give these to him whenever he needs them. You know, she said there was one time she gave a shot to him, and he was so incapacitated they had to carry him back to his trailer.
Jeez, wow.
Yeah, but I think I made the right decision by leaving. The reason why I did leave was because of that young man that said that one of the elders laid hands on him, and I was just fixing to graduate the program, just fixing to graduate. And I thought, it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't make any difference, you know. I was already in what they call the reentry stage, which is getting ready to go back out in the workforce. And the only reason that they helped you with that is so that you could get a job and be a faithful tither, because that's what it was all about. You know, I was told that the tithes went straight to, you know, the family that was there, that was in charge. But I got word back that associate pastor had become very intoxicated, whatever he did, and crossed the median coming 59 south and killed a family, or most of the family, and ended up in prison for it. And I was for involuntary manslaughter. And I thought, well, there you go. You know, you let in a little bit and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happened. And to this day, there's pretty much a ghost town over there. But I feel bad. Like I said, I do click in and watch the Sunday services, and just the movement that you see of the people swaying back and forth and, you know, singing the song of the Lord and being forced to come up. You know, that was another thing, being forced to do anything, being forced to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to Tuesday morning men's prayer and get up and pray out loud, like he was talking about. You know, they made girls come to men's prayer. If you weren't conforming to what they or he thought you needed to be at, then there was repercussions. And that to me is no way to live. That's not, and that was the other thing. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. There's not much freedom there, because
they used to use that scripture all the time. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Oh my God, there's no freedom whatsoever. It was just like a constant control mechanism of
Yeah,
that Tuesday morning prayer was awful, man. It was like, first of all, Tuesday men morning prayer is what it was supposed to be. But then you have these young teenage girls that were made to come in and pray by you. Like, well, what was that about? Freaking weird. And then we're reamed over the coals if we don't pray out loud, pray out loud. That's the sing pray. You know, it's the same freaking.
I really thought the Lord had me someplace special, because there was an event that happened there that, in addition to the pastor's son being healed, that was miraculous. I believe that was real. But there was something that happened there when I was there the first time that I was a big part of, being part of the worship team and being part of the sound reinforcement team and all of that. It was the Carla Faye Tucker deal. It was nothing to come home from work, and there are people from the other side of the world, and I'm being called down. I just get home. I'm being called down to help do the interview. There's CBS is there, and ABC's there, NBC's there, and CNN's there. I'm thinking, man, where in the world do you have me at, Lord? And it's the pastor. And when you see your pastor on the national TV concerning an event that's happening that the whole world knows about, it feeds into the whole deal where this is where you need to be at. You need to listen to us, because look how important we are. You know, I was there the day I want to say crucified. I was there the day that they executed her. We took the worship team down there and set up, and it was it was the strangest thing. You remember, I remember equating it to probably the day they crucified Christ, because we had on one side, you know, people that were dressed up like witches, and the sorcerer, what do you call it, the Grim Reaper. I remember seeing him. I remember meeting Bianca Jagger on the other side of the spectrum, who was there for Amnesty International. It was crazy. So
So let me just explain real quick what you're referring to. One of the ministries that they had outside this place was the prison ministry. So they would go into prisons and, preach, do whatever. And then like they led Carla Faye Tucker to Christ during this. This was before her execution. So there was this big, like when her execution was about to happen, we all went to the actual, it was at the prison, right? Like outside the prison?
Yes, in Huntsville.
Okay, so yes. So what you're talking about is you have people that are, not wanting her to be executed on one side, and then on the other side, there are people wanting her to be executed. And so, anyways, yeah, it was our church that had led her to Christ, and just became this big thing that they would talk about in like church services, and like people were doing interviews, like you said, Faye Tucker. So she was an American woman sentenced to death for killing 2 people with a pickaxe during a burglary. She was the first woman to be, she was the first woman to be executed in the United States. So this was back in, I guess, 1998 that she was executed. Wow, I thought it was before then. Crazy. So like you were saying, when you're seeing your pastor do these interviews, I'm sure it's like really like intriguing. You're like seeing all this stuff which you think are good things and everything, and coming on to this. So
yeah, and in addition to being in class when I was in the program and getting called to the day room, and we got to watch TV, and it was the second tower coming down. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? We all thought it was the end of the world. But right after that, it was the next day. That's right. We had a work crew, and that's a whole nother ball of wax. Mm-hmm. The work crews that the men would do, in addition to working on campus, we would go out. There was one of the elders that would go out and communicate with different organizations and get us work, where we would go out and work, do hard labor, and we were told that the money that we're making was be for students who didn't have tuition. Well, the truth of the matter is, no one came to the center unless you had tuition, which was $500 a month, I think it was back then. But that was what was being told. And I found out they were making really, really good money, which also feeds into how well dressed some of the people were there, and all the little gadgets that the pastor would continually buy for his equipment and his guitar and stuff. That was, we ended up, they were going to cancel the Italian festival, but we ended up doing it. We started on 9/12, after seeing the towers come down. It was surreal, once again, to be a part of something that doing the Italian festival. I got to meet Michael Bolton. I remember being there and seeing all the Middle Eastern people that were down there. It was very high tension, seeing jets flying over Houston, no air traffic. It was just, I couldn't believe. So once again, I'm like, where do you have me at, Lord? This is really powerful, the stuff that we're doing, but like I said, the money never made it to tuition for these students. It was being spent selfishly. I remember going into one of the rooms, because the place is an old school. I remember going to I was being told by one of the elders, go to the room and get Pastor this. And when I went into the room, I couldn't believe it. And this is not exaggerating. It was probably at least 2 foot high, 2 foot deep. And there were some boxes stacked on top of that 2 foot of boxes. And we're talking empty boxes of equipment that was being bought just for the pastor's pleasure, whether it was laptops or gear for his guitars. And I'm talking a pretty good sized room. And I thought, well, here's the money. This is a guy, because none of this stuff is cheap. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of empty boxes in there,
What were they boxes? What were they boxes of?
Like guitar pedals and things of that sort, rack modules and stuff that, we really had no need for. He had plenty, basically toys. Musical toys, and I shook my head and thought, this is in excess. At the very least, it was in excess, And then there was a deal that, being part of the worship team, yes, pastor's daughter wrote quite a few songs and stuff, but we would do CDs and we didn't ever get anything out of it. Your dad and I were on one of the CDs, and there was never any compensation for anything. Everything was for the Lord.
There was never any, you guys never got any royalties from it.
No, they pressed them somewhere and we packaged them there. I don't remember if you ever had to do that. We would have to package, vacuum wrap, seal them, and sell them wherever which Straightway went. They went with them.
Oh, I was the one that sold those albums. I was in charge of all of that. So kind of explain real quick, when you finally left, were you kicked out the second time, or was it just one of those that you decided to leave and you took off?
No, it had to do with the young man that was manhandled physically.
Okay.
Work crew, and they would give you a bus ticket and take you down to the bus station, and then you were on your own. Were
you pretty much disowned after that? Like you had nobody would speak to you or anything, or?
Right, for a long time. The good thing was my sister and brother-in-law had just left probably a few months before. So even though they took me down to the bus station, I made a phone call and found them, and they happened to be living in Wharton.
Oh, okay.
And so they had joined the church. It's strange. You talked about the kids were never allowed to go to school in the city system, and I can pretty much tell you why. And after leaving the center, when you go become a part of a church and you tell them where you come from, everybody knows the infamous center. They all know, all the police, all the firemen, all the teachers, and all the churches that are in Wharton know all about the cult that's in Hungerford, Texas. And that's why they don't want you going to anything that's public, because you'll hear about ourselves, so to speak.
Well, yeah, just crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and end here. The connection is kind of going in and out, but thank you so much for doing this, and some really good information here. And if anyone else has a story, like I've said before, I mean, this is not as dire as you think it would be. Just telling your part of it, and it's all another piece to the puzzle and everything. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon. So all right, bye. Well, just